Hi folks, welcome back to Cattail Acres. I'm Deb, and this morning I have brought in just a ton of stuff from the garden. I tried to kind of film some of that harvesting. You may see clips of it in the intro, but I didn't do so well with filming while I was harvesting. So I still have a lot to learn. But in here, I have a tripod and better lighting, and we're gonna see how this works. This is my first time trying to shoot this process in the kitchen. It's not my first time trying to shoot a process in the kitchen, but it's not something I'm really expert at. There are a lot of things that I'm not really expert at. But this morning I have lots of veggies that I want to get cleaned, cut, and blanched. And I'd like to show you some of that process. When you want to freeze vegetables out of the garden, one of the first things that you want to do is to blanch those vegetables. In order to blanch those vegetables, you need to dunk them in boiling water, usually for 1 to 5 minutes, depending on what it is. And then, and this is the important part, you want to stop that cooking process so that they don't sit there and continue to cook. You want to dunk them in some ice water. So I'm going to cover this table because I'm going to make a horrendous mess. There's going to be dirt, and there's going to be water, and there's going to be just all kinds of stuff on this table. So I'm going to go ahead and cover this table so when I'm done I can take it outside, shake it out, and throw it in the laundry. So for that purpose, well, that didn't go as well as I wanted it to. All right, let's try that again. See if I can be all fancy. Well, that was better. I'm gonna try it again. Hang on. Okay, that was better. Much better. Remember to cut out those sound effects. Yeah. I'm gonna do it again without the sound effects. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, my little table is completely covered. And this is just from this morning. Like, these carrots, the chard, the turnips, the spinach, the broccoli, the cauliflower, all of this stuff is from this morning out of the garden. And all of this stuff needs to be processed, cleaned and processed, and put away so that we can enjoy our harvest. I haven't decided yet on the cauliflower, on the cabbage, whether I want to freeze it or cook it, or we may just cook this one. At some point, I will be trying again to use the Mason Tops fermenting lids and see if I can't ferment some sauerkraut. But for right now, I think I'm just gonna wash this big boy and put him in the refrigerator so that we can enjoy him with some sausage or as coleslaw or both. So I'm gonna wash this guy. I'm gonna wash all of these things. I'll show you some of that cleaning process, like on the carrots and stuff, but a lot of it's gonna take place over at the sink, and it's just basic washing, just washing. And you wanna wash especially your greens and your spinach, you wanna wash those real good, front and back, because critters have a tendency to hide in these leaves. For instance, let me show you. This little guy right here. See that little guy? I didn't see him when I don't know if you can focus on it. Anyway, I couldn't see him when I picked the stuff and put it in the basket, but I see him now, and he's gonna go outside. But you wanna wash all of your leaves really, really good, because not only do the critters like to get in there, but sometimes, especially in these big leaves with the grooves in them, it's easy for dirt to get in there and hide. And especially if you're like us and use a lot of manure, you don't want to eat that, right? So wash your stuff. I'm gonna go do some of that over there, and I will be back for the carrots. Okay, I've cleared away some of the greens. The spinach, the cabbage, and the cauliflower and the broccoli are now over there on the counter, waiting to be processed. So now I'm going to address the turnips and the carrots. Now, I don't know how many of you have ever harvested these things before. I have, but just a few times. And I gotta tell you that already, and it's early in the season, but already these carrots are the best ones I've ever grown. And they are still a little small, but they're really crowded in there, so I wanted to thin them out. So on the turnips, I've already cut off the long root end, much like a radish. And the part that, you know, most people eat is this bulb here, but we also enjoy the leaves. So I'm gonna separate the two because they process differently. And put the little bulbs in there and the leaves in this pan because they are rather large. And we can process these turnip greens and eat them with our black-eyed peas or a purple hull peas or any kind of comfort food night that we have. These will be great with it. And then just put the little bulbs in there. And I am really impressed with how big these guys have gotten. Turnips is another one of those things, you know, I've always loved turnips. And they're pretty easy to grow, but if your soil isn't right, you're not going to get very good turnips. And the soil here last season was not so great. We got a few little turnips, but nothing like this. And this is just a few. Like this is just like 6 or 7. Let's see, I got 2, 4, 6, 8 turnips here. And between the bulbs and the greens, for just the 2 of us, this would make many, many meals. Of course, we're going to share this with our family and friends, and it will make a little less than that. But we still have plenty of turnips out in the garden. So, yeah, that's a lot of food to come out of just 8 plants. Now, this will shrink down when you cook it. Like any other kind of greens, like spinach or any other kind of greens, it will shrink down when you cook it. But this is still going to be a good mess of greens. Like just these 8 plants, that's plenty for a meal in turnips and plenty for a good mess of greens in greens. So there's those guys. On the carrots, I'm going to do them similarly, but we don't use the tops. What I'll do with those tops, and what I may do with some of the other turnip tops, depending on how tender or bitter they are, is we'll give some of those things to the chickens, because they can eat those and enjoy them, and you know, we don't like them so much. So with the carrots, I'm going to do much the same as the turnips, only I'm going to go down onto the actual carrot itself. And then I'm just going to take that little tip off. And you can see it's still a small carrot. But baby carrots out of the garden beat baby carrots out of the store any day. Which, honestly, those baby carrots out of the store aren't really baby carrots. A lot of them are just shaved down to look like baby carrots, which, I don't know, just seems kind of like false advertising to me. But these guys are fresh, clean. There's no pesticides. These are actually heirloom variety carrots. The Red Dragon and the mix that we got. These are going to be really, really nice. And again, you know, we could leave these tops on, but they would eventually kind of wither the carrots because they would take away from this taproot to try to keep the greens alive. But if you clean them off like that, they'll stay a lot fresher longer. And if you wanted to, you know, just keep the integrity, you could leave, I don't know, maybe an inch or so on top of the greens. Some people like that as a presentation, you know. I've never tried it that way, but for storage, you know, I think I'm going to do that actually. Not all of them, but I think some of them I'm just going to leave the little tops, about an inch of them on, and just see if they last longer in the refrigerator that way. Just kind of run my own little experiment there. I mean, why not? You know, if you're going to go to all the trouble of planting and growing and harvesting your own veg, you know, take every opportunity you can to learn about it and be creative with how you do things and intentional. Here I am preaching, sorry. Let me just kick that soapbox aside. Get off my little soapbox there. I have a few of those I keep around and kick away every now and then just to keep myself out of trouble. But most of the time, I just cut them down like that. I don't know, maybe that soapbox is there because I need to be on it. I feel like I need to be on it. I would love to help inspire people to embrace their creativity, and I'm very passionate about that. I think the saddest thing I ever heard was when somebody I love dearly, who I shall not name, told me that they were not creative. And sometimes I still want to cry thinking about it, because I knew better. I knew better. I knew they were creative, and they didn't know it. And it made me so sad to think that this very beautifully creative person thought that they weren't creative. So I want to inspire anybody I can to do things differently, to break all the rules sometimes, not like the laws and stuff that we have to obey to, you know, get by, but like the rules of doing things, right? Like, this is the right way to do it, period. End of discussion. Well, yeah. I mean, maybe that's the right way. But will you really know if you don't try it another way? Will you really know? Like, deep down in the core of your being? I don't know. I don't know. I think you really have to try things and make your own decisions. Sure, take all the advice you can get, right? Like, get all of the learning about it that you can find, and then try it your own way. Oh, I got a little onion. Just see what happens, because you never know. You might come up with a better way. You might come up with a better or a unique way that nobody else thought of. And that is being creative. Creativity is often thought of in terms of the arts, and that's why this person that I cared about really thought that they weren't creative, because they didn't consider themselves artistic. Well, okay, maybe you're not artistic, but you are darn sure creative, because I've seen you be creative. And if I can help it, I don't want anybody to ever feel like that. Like they're not creative. Like they're not, I don't know, fully alive in some fashion. Anyway, stop it. I gotta kick that soapbox aside. Carrots are cleaned. I'm gonna take these greens out to the chickens, and I'm gonna wash these guys up in the sink, and you can join me back at the pot. And that's what they look like when they're all cleaned up. Aren't those pretty? Look at those colors. Oh my goodness. And that came out of our garden. Right out there. Oh, you can't see it now. Yeah, it's not gonna focus on the garden, but those came out of that garden out there, along with all these. I mean, look at the size of that chard. That all came out of the garden this morning. Oh wait, there's more. So there's that. There's that. Yep, got dirt in my sink. I think that's a good thing. And there's all that. So now I just gotta clean up my sink and get this water going. And then once this is boiling, I will start processing things. Not the chard. This chard, this cauliflower, and this cabbage are going in the fridge. These will be cooked for dinners. I've got to see if I have more broccoli in the fridge, but whatever cauliflower and whatever broccoli are in the fridge, that's what I'm going to process today with all the spinach. Now that I'm done making my big mess, I can gather up this tablecloth, take it right out the door, and I'm going this way because the porch is dry on this side, and shake it out. Most of the dirt goes back where it belongs. Okay, it's a bit precarious with the tripod exactly where it is, but that's kind of how I have to have it if I'm going to film this. I don't want it on the stove, and I don't have any fancy equipment to hold it up in other ways. So, this is the spinach. Let me see about broccoli. Hi. I'm trying to learn. Okay, so the first thing is to cut up the broccoli and cauliflower into pieces that we think we might want to steam. We don't want them to be too big, but all the tenderer parts of the stalk we want to keep too, because those are good. That's pretty tough there. There we go. We'll keep those bits. Isn't quite where I want it as far as being ready. But basically what we're gonna do is put all of the pieces in the basket. And then as soon as this is boiling really well, we will dunk them in for 3 to 5 minutes. Okay, I think my water is boiling enough that I can blanch my broccoli. I've got my bowl of ice ready to go. I need to put some water in it. This is what's going to stop the cooking action. Let me scooch this because we're going to want that right there. All right, there's my bowl of ice water. This is what's going to stop the cooking action when we pull the broccoli out. Now, this basket has a handle that moves. And I'm pretty sure that once I let it go, it's gonna sink down into that water. So I'm gonna use a pair of tongs to lower my basket into the water. Very gently. Just like that. Get those down in there and start my timer. So I've set my timer for 3 minutes. That's about what broccoli should take. But you'll notice that as soon as I put that in there, that water kind of stopped boiling. That's because my broccoli isn't as hot as the water that it went into. I'm just going to move those around a little bit in there. And once we get this done, we're going to do the very same thing with the cauliflower. Of course, there's about 3 times as much cauliflower as there is broccoli, so I'll probably have to do this a few times. And then what I will do is change the water because I don't want my spinach to taste like broccoli and cauliflower. And you can leave, like if you've left a little bit of leaf on, that won't hurt anything. The leaves are edible, the stems are edible. There's no part of the broccoli that is not edible. Some parts are more tender than others, is all. Now, if I want this to move to a boil more quickly, what I will do is put this lid on. And I think that's exactly what I'm going to do, because I want that to get as close to boiling for the time allotted as possible. And we'll be back in just a minute. Look at that color. Now we are about 18 seconds away from having to pull this out. The water is returning to a boil. Even though it's not completely boiling anymore, it has cooked the broccoli to the extent that it needs to be cooked to be considered blanched. There's my time. So I'm going to use my tongs to pull this out and drain off as much of that boiling water as possible, because the next thing we're going to do is take this over here. And I don't really need the whole basket in there, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to dump broccoli in there. And yes, I'm going to have bits of broccoli in my cauliflower, and that's okay. Okay, set that over there for the cauliflower. Make sure all of this is down in there. And then the next step is to fish that out and put it in a bowl to finish cooling. Okay, so now I've got my bowl. I'm gonna fish out my broccoli, probably some of the ice with it, that's okay, and put it in the bowl. Oops. I'm getting more ice than broccoli. Help. I need another hand. Can I have another hand? Can I have a hand? Who's clapping? I hear you clapping. I need a hand. All right, there's that. See, if I wasn't taking video right now, I would have both hands to manage this situation with. But that's okay, because I love you guys, and I want to share with you. So we've got our beautifully blanched, not overcooked, still beautifully green broccoli, ready to go in the freezer. I still have a few pieces in here I'm going to fish out, but you guys don't need to see that. All right, so my timer has gone off, and once again, I will do the same thing with the cauliflower as I did with the broccoli, and that is to let it do its thing, let it drip a little, and then just put it right over in that cold water as quickly as possible. And because I like my fingers, I'm using the handle, or the tongs, to handle the basket. All right, and that's ready for the next batch. While these are cooling, I can fill it up with the next batch of cauliflower and get that started. Okay, so here's the part that I almost forgot to show you. When you get ready to freeze the broccoli and cauliflower, you want to do it on a sheet pan, like this. If you have room, you can put a full sheet pan in your freezer. If you don't have room for a full sheet pan, you can use a cookie sheet, half sheet pan, quarter sheet pan, whatever you have room for in your freezer. But what you want to do is just kind of lay them out in a single layer and freeze them like that. Then when you go to put them in your bags, they're not all clumped together in a mass. So that's what I'm gonna do now with my cauliflower. I've already done my broccoli and it's in the freezer. I guess you could get away without the parchment paper, but seeing as this is kind of the first time I'm doing this, Tom has done this before. He's done this with okra and stuff. That's kind of big. I'm surprised I let that get into the blanching, but it seems to have blanched okay, as well as any of it. But if you can get this into a single layer on your paper and freeze it like that, then you'll have individual pieces instead of a clump in your bag. And then you can just shake out of your bag however much you want for that meal and put the rest back in the freezer. And this doesn't have to be perfect. You can probably still break it apart. I say probably. You can still break it apart after it's frozen. You know, if this and this are touching and you have to do that, that's no big deal. At least it wasn't with the okra that my husband did. Tom has made a few more of these kitchen experiments than I've had the time to. So I'm really reveling in this morning, being able to be home and preserve some of our harvest, and I just, this is where my heart is. Home is where the heart is, absolutely. And this is where my heart is. Here with the chickens and the garden and the kitty cat and my hubby, and especially my hubby. Even if he's a little ornery sometimes. I think I'll just have to keep him. He's good. He's a good guy. Okay, there. I have it all in one layer. Now it's time to see if it will fit in my little freezer. Okay, so, woo, video. Kitchen. Nothing will frizzle your hair like working in the kitchen, especially on a rainy day. Especially with anything to do with boiling water. So yeah, I'm not surprised my hair is a mess. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me here. I'm gonna can of worms this, as they say on Writing Excuses. And no, this isn't a paid promotion. I just happen to really love that podcast, and I'm just now catching up with it after being out of the loop for a couple of years now. But as they say on that show, I'm gonna can of worms this because we have run out of time, and I've run out of ice. And I've run out of room in the freezer. So we will do the spinach and whatever else I come up with tomorrow. Until then, you guys don't forget to subscribe, because there's a lot of strange things coming your way from Cattail Acres. Y'all be safe, be well, and we'll see you.